following up from Oldboy, I've watched the final film in the trilogy.
Yeah.
The less popular Lady Vengence.
Yeah.
Which in my opinion is a better film than Oldboy.
Dun, dun, dun.
Controversially.
Did you say Oldboy is the weakest of the trilogy, or is that Mr. Vengeance?
Mr. Vengence is the weakest. It's an amazing film, especially considering it was like the second film Pat Chan-wook made.
Yeah.
But no, that's the weakest. Oldboy's the second weakest.
Yeah.
So it's in between. But Lady Vengeance, I think, is the best film of the trilogy.
Yeah.
I also think it's one of the best films of the last, 10 years.
Yeah.
Or whenever it came out. It's a completely different film to Oldboy.
Yeah.
Stylistically, it's not as kinetic.
No.
It's not as fast. It's kind of more slow and kind of lumbering. But that's kind of why I love it.
Yeah.
It's a film of two halves as well.
Well, yes, I've seen the film, and so just before you get into it, I saw this at 3 in the morning on Film Fork. I watched it from 3 in the morning till 5. And I remember it being really, really good. I can remember quite a bit of it. But yes, I'll let you continue.
Alright. So the story concerns a lady called Gumja. Gumja. I think that's how you say her name. And she was a teacher who worked in a school. And she's imprisoned for basically kidnapping and murdering a child. And she's put in prison for it.
Yeah.
In prison, she's a model prisoner. She helps everybody. She's like an angelic figure with like a kind of sadistic streak to her.
Yeah.
She gets out of prison, and it's revealed to you that, spoilers, she didn't do it.
Yeah.
She was actually set up by another teacher who kidnapped and murdered this boy. And she took the blame for it because he'd kidnapped her daughter and was threatening to kill her.
Yeah.
So basically her story is essentially her seeking to take revenge on the guy for doing it. This is all spoilers now. As she begins to piece together like where he is and like how he did it, she finds that she ultimately can't kill him.
Yeah.
She can't take revenge on him. But what she finds is that this guy's actually a serial child murderer.
Yeah.
She reveals this information to this detective, and she gathers together all the parents of the children who were murdered, and they're all given an opportunity, because she captures the guy.
Yeah.
They're all given an opportunity to take their own form of revenge against him in what I consider to be one of the best last acts of any film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It is so shocking and stark and dark and sickly, but kind of humorous at the same time.
Yeah.
You kind of... Well, when the film was getting to that point, I couldn't quite believe it was kind of getting to that point.
What do they actually do with him? I can't remember now.
Well, what happens is she kidnaps him and they take him to like an old former school and they tie him up. And she gathers together all the parents, and they're all given like a number so we can all go in individually and have their own form of revenge. So like they'll beat him up, or like they'll chop his fingers off, or they'll do whatever they want to him.
Yeah.
It's an amazing bit where this old woman, particularly like the grandmother of one of the murdered children, she kind of just looks at him, walks around, and you think that's it.
Yeah.
Then you go back in and you find she actually stabbed him in the neck with scissors.
Yeah.
It's really difficult watching, and it's really unnerving.
Yeah.
Like I said, you kind of can't quite believe the film has gone this far.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a film of two halves. The first half is all about establishing the character of Gumja. She is one of the most interesting film characters I think ever.
Yeah.
I think she's almost like a walking contradiction.
Yeah.
She's partly truth and partly fiction.
I was thinking, what's that in?
That's from Taxi Driver.
I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Christopherson.
The Chris Christopherson song. Yeah. But that perfectly sums up Gyumja, because you never really understand her as a character.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so interesting. Because you're presented flashbacks throughout the first half of the film of her being in prison, and you get monologues from former inmates.
Yeah.
Basically, Gumjar was amazing. She helped me, beat this prison bully, and she always looked after me, or she helped me in a bad time. In contrast to the cold person that you're seeing kind of walking out of a prison and trying to re-establish her life.
Yeah.
It's a complete utter contrast, so you never really get an understanding of her as a character. The film's also a brilliant use of costumes and makeup in the film. if you want a good example of it, I would recommend Lady Vengeance. In the film, at the start of the film, when she gets out of prison, she's wearing very light floral clothing, which is kind of signifying of like the past her and what people expect her to be like still. Only if she gets out of prison and she's completely different. And then as the film goes on, she starts wearing more and more black, and she wears more and more leather, and she wears like the famous red eyeshadow. And until the end of the film, when they kidnap the teacher, she's completely bathed in black. You know, like her coat covers up her face, and she's completely submerged into this role of not being the person taking revenge, but being the arbiter of the vengeance. She's overseeing it, and she's kind of had to completely cover herself in blackness to do it. It's an amazing visual film. Again, Park Chan-wook is an absolute master of visual medium. So also, like in prison, she finds God, and she finds religion. But again, like all these kind acts she's doing and finding religion, it's up to you to decide whether she actually does want to do it, or whether it's just an act so she can call upon favours later. Presumably it'll make life easy for her when she gets out of prison to basically conduct her revenge if everyone thinks she's a nice person and not a child murderer. So that could be the reason why she's acting so nice in prison and why she acts like such a saint.
Ambiguities, kids. Gotta love them.
Gotta love it. So she gets out of prison and she starts working at a bakery. Which is
I remember that, she makes the cakes.
And what she wants to do is she's trying to track down, and she's calling upon favours from all prison inmates. So she gets one and gets her husband to make her a gun specific to her design. She'll get others and other contacts, and she'll help to track down. Ultimately, she's calling upon old favours to track down this guy. At the same time, she begins to reconnect with her daughter, who, when she was put in prison, was taken away and she was adopted by an Australian couple. There's a really great sequence, because the whole film I think is really darkly comic, it's really funny. There's a great scene where she goes to Australia, where her child is, to find her, and like the Australian's like, I don't know what you're saying, mate. And then we all just get drunk together, because we can't understand what each other's saying, so we just get drunk. And then she's got to take the daughter back home to Korea with her, because basically the daughter makes her. And the two of them begin to reconnect. The two of them begin to kind of they're trying to understand through obviously the barrier of language. They're trying to understand why they did what they did to each other. And there's an amazing sequence where this is after she's captured the teacher who committed all these murders, and he can speak English. What the teacher did was, to get away with his crimes, he was a Korean to English teacher. So he'd stay in a school for a bit, pick out a child that wasn't in his class, murder, presumably rape them, and then move on to the next school, and that's how he'd get away with it. And brilliantly, again, it's quite darkly comic. The parents are trying to understand why they did it, because he would get all the ransom money. He'd put the child up for ransom, and they're wondering, what does he do with the ransom money? And Goemja reveals that just to buy a yacht.
To buy a yacht?
Yeah. So he murdered and presumably raped these children just to get a yacht. And they're all like, what? That's it? Again, it's a very dark comic. So she's captured the teacher, and he's a Korean to English translator. And she's speaking in Korean, and then he's translating into English, and we do like a back and forth where basically the two of them reveal to each other, truths, and she reveals, why she couldn't look after her, why she had to leave when she was, 2 years old, and why she was in prison. And it's an incredibly affecting scene. It's all mostly done in one take. Makes use of split screen as well. It's all focusing on Gwamja's face, and she's kind of breaking down, and she's crying, and she's trying to hold it all back. Again, an amazing central performance. Again, one of the best central performances I've ever seen in a film. I think the lady that plays Gwamja is amazing. Park Chan-wook really knows, I think, how to get the best out of his actors. What also makes Lady Vengeance a lot of fun, especially if you're a fan of the Vengence trilogy, is that it's got a lot of cameos from actors who have previously been in Vengence trilogy films. So a reoccurring motif in the film is that Guamja has kind of hallucinations, and she sees the little boy that was murdered and the one that she was blamed of killing.
Yeah.
And it's right at the end of the film after they've killed the teacher, and she's kind of crying in a toilet, and she sees the little boy kind of playing with his marble. And then she kind of puts her head down, she pulls it up, and the little boy's kind of grown up, but he's still wearing little boy clothes.
Yeah.
And it's the guy that plays the bad guy in Oldboy.
Yeah.
Kind of like, no.
Yeah.
The guy that plays Odesu, as I mentioned in the Oldboy review, he plays the teacher. One of the main characters, who's also one of the main actors in The Host, he's in the film as well. He makes a kind of brief cameo.
Yeah.
As like a hitman trying to kill Guamja. So while Lady Vengeance isn't as kinetic or as exhilarating as Oldboy, I think it's a film that sticks with you more.
Yeah.
I think it's a film that haunts you more. I think it's an infinitely more complex and interesting film than Oldboy. As I said, in particular, what keeps it going is the cinematic style, the incredibly complex, ambiguous central character, the incredibly dark themes it's dealing with. Like I said, the idea that these parents are taking almost justice into their own hands to, see fit to kill this guy. Is it right what they're doing? Is it wrong? Moral ambiguity, ethical ambiguity. It's up to you to decide. What would you do in that situation? And like I said, that it's darkly comic as well. It is really funny.
Yeah.
There's a great scene at the end where they go back to Guamja's bakery, and they've just killed the guy, and they're all sat round, and they all like a cupcake, and they pass around cake for each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, that slice is too big for me. Oh, I'll have a piece. Oh no, thank you. It's just like it's like so weird. Like after they've murdered this guy, and they're just eating cake, they're just passing it around. So in my opinion, it's a better film than Oldboy.
Yeah.
It's more complex. It's more interesting. It's anchored by an amazing central performance. Again, Chan-wook is completely breaking the traditional cinematographic style to do this story. So it's a 10 out of 10.
Yep.
It's an absolute masterpiece. And when this one came out, particularly over in the West, it kind of got shrugs from people who'd seen Oldboy.
I'd heard that this was by far the weakest, is what I'd heard before seeing it. Yeah.
But see, I
watched it years ago, so before it got reappraised.
It's been reappraised now, when it first came out, particularly over here in the West and America, people who've seen Oldboy loved the kinetic, thrilling action of Oldboy.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of get this slower, more lumbering, more difficult film.
Yeah.
I can see why it would inspire kind of shrugs.
Yeah.
But if you kind of stick with it and you get into it, what you find is, like I said, in my opinion, a more complex and interesting film.
Yeah.
It's since been reappraised, and people are beginning to see it as being the best in the trilogy.
Yeah.
Like I said, Oldboy's a great start, but Lady Vengeance is where all the themes, but like I said, particularly if you see it in the context of the trilogy, it kind of makes more sense. It is the culmination of everything. All the themes and ideas that Chan-wook has been building to, I feel, is kind of concluded and rounded off in this trilogy. Yeah. I don't think he'll make another film about revenge.
No.
Ever again. No. In fact, in stark contrast, he said that after he made Lady Vengeance, he says, I'm done with revenge movies. So he makes like this kind of romantic comedy with I'm a Cyborg. Yeah. That's a really sweet film. It's a really good film. It's like I don't know. It's like Garden State if it wasn't like horrible.
It wasn't horrible.
If it wasn't shit.
Yeah.
It's about a woman who she thinks she's a cyborg and she's in a mental asylum, and she falls in love with a guy that thinks he's a bunny rabbit. Yeah. It's a really good film. Yeah. It's like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest on acid. Oh yeah. I would really recommend it. Yeah. So Lady Vengeance is thoroughly miserable. It's heavy, but it'll stick with you and you'll want to rewatch it. So it's 10 out of 10 for me. Yep. I can't fault it. I think it's the best in the trilogy.
I also loved it when I saw it.
And I would even recommend you go back and rewatch it. Yeah. When you can, because
I shall do. I want to watch Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance for the first time first.
God, yeah. Yeah. That is the most miserable one. Yeah. Man. Yeah. Man. he's a disturbed guy.
Yeah.
He's a disturbed guy, that Park Chan-wook. I wonder if he'll ever make a film again like Oldboy or Lady Vengeance, or
I don't know.
because like Stoker's a great film, but it's quite stately in comparison to his earlier more extreme Korean films.
Yeah, I wonder why I haven't done it since Stoker. What's the beef, Park Chan-wook?
Yeah, explain. Tell us. I'm desperate to see your next film.
Yeah.
I think Park Chan-wook is one of the best filmmakers working today.
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah.
I've not seen a film of his I haven't liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all inspire a reaction.
Yeah.
I think. The only one I've not seen, I think, is JSA, which is his first film.
Yeah.
And that's all about like North-South Korea tensions. And First, which is his vampire.
Oh, that's meant to be amazing.
It's meant to be amazing. Yeah. They're the only two I've not seen. I've seen all of his other films, and I love all of them.
Yeah.
So see Lady Vengeance, and then just watch the rest of Park Chan-wook's filmography, because he, like I said, he's one of the best filmmakers working today. You don't get much better than that.